Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Steelers DB. With me is my good buddy Nick Martin. Today, we are going over our final position group of the 2023 NFL Draft Class, giving you guys our positional rankings, our top five strengths, weaknesses on all these different players. But first off, Nick, how we doing, brother?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Aside from having to figure out this mock draft and what the hell these teams are gonna do, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk about the safeties in this class.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's weird because all the film study and like film watching that we've been doing is like coming to a close, but like just putting the finishing touches on all these like final draft pieces has been incredibly stressful. I literally don't think I'm gonna sleep from now until like Sunday. So I'm already thinking about just going to Walmart and buying like a freaking 24 pack of monsters because I feel like I'm gonna need it by the end of this week.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, let's get into the safety class, man. Just kind of my general thoughts on the group before we kind of get into our rankings. Kind of similar to what I said yesterday about the inside linebacker group. Not my favorite positional group in this class, just being honest. There are a couple guys that I really like, some guys that I'm higher on than the consensus. But overall, I think this class is weaker, especially in terms of what we've seen in recent seasons. I think it's stronger if you're looking for a safety that's going to give you some more slot capabilities. I think if you're looking for like more traditional, like free safety center fielder types, I think that you're going to have trouble really finding that guy that you're looking for maybe in this class. But I want to know, your overall general thoughts on the class as a whole and, how you view this set of players.
I did not really enjoy watching the safety class very much. I watched about 17 safeties. There were definitely some safeties I wish I could have gotten to. The really conflicting part about this safety class is, unlike the corner class, a lot of these safeties tested really poorly. Some of them with even incredible film, like Christopher Smith from Georgia, who I really like his game. I could really hedge his bet on that 1.55 10-yard split as his one good athletic measurable testing. But he plays fast on film. He's like my honorable mention guy. Overall, the safety class, there's just so many questions. Guys like JL Skinner, they got hurt in the process. We didn't get to see them test. And that was a huge part of the draft process for him, because a lot of people had questions on whether or not he was a fluid player, how fast he might test. There are guys like that it just led to a lot of questions overall with this class.
Yeah, I agree. Chris Smith was on the outside looking in my rankings as well. But, I love how smart he is, how good of a processor he is. He takes good angles, love the way he feels the alley. But the athletic testing, man, like it's a tough one to get over. Like I do think that the film shows a starting caliber player potentially at the next level, but it's just hard for me to bet on, even in a class like this, to put too much of my stock in someone that's going to be an athletic outlier. I mean, there's not really another way to really phrase it. I like what you said about JL Skinner. Heading into Senior Bowl week, I was really optimistic. Last summer when I was watching him, he was that like big kind of 6'3" type of safety who can do a lot of different things, play the overhang, play in the box, physical guy, had some booming hits in the games that I watched. But just unfortunately, health just was not in his favor throughout the process. So he's another guy who I think has, kind of seen his stock dip a little bit. But let's
Speaking, oh,
go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, speaking from a Steelers angle on JL Skinner, you look at some of the safeties they have, and they brought in Keanu Neal, who's a very big type of safety, almost linebacker-esque.
Hmm.
JL Skinner, he talked with Tomlin a good amount down at the Senior Bowl. There was some interest early in the process. It's kind of waned off towards then, but that's a guy I would watch for in the 120 range potentially.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good little nugget right there. Um, let's go ahead and get into the top fives, man. Who's your number five safety?
Oh, it's a linebacker by the name of Trenton Simpson.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
I got
yeah,
you.
he's my number 5. I'm not gonna waste too much time talking about this because I talked about it on the linebacker on the linebacking ranking group. But Trenton Simpson, for me, I just think he processes a lot better from a third level perspective and towards the outside looking in, rather rather as a second level defender playing linebacker, because I just think there's too much for him to process and his eyes tend to get lost in trash too often. But from the third level, I think he shows very explosive range. Like he's an explosive downhill player, but also he can just move sideline to sideline like instantly. And there's a lot of coverage upside to him, which is why I see him more as a safety type rather as a linebacker type. I just think they both are projections in that regard, but I think there's more for me to hedge my bet on Trenton Simpson as a safety as opposed to a linebacker.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was honestly, I knew that you were ranking him as a safety, and it still kind of surprised me a little bit when we were talking about that in our linebacker episode. But like everything that you're saying, like it's not anything that I don't necessarily agree with. I definitely think that the processing, is still very much a work in progress in terms of his eyes and, making more plays closer to the line of scrimmage instead of 4, 5, 6 yards down the field. So, yeah, I mean, Simpson, I think that totally makes sense. My number five safety is Alabama's Jordan Battle. Had a lot of hype, coming out of the summer. I remember seeing him in some late first round mock drafts, entering the season. But 6'1", 210 pounds, really well built safety, solid length, very experienced player. He's played, I think, like 5 seasons, or 4 or 5 seasons under Nick Saban. Been a starter for the majority of the time on defense there. Really smart player, high football IQ, good processor on route concepts, particularly in zone coverage. Mostly takes good angles when playing single high and in the deep half. I see some acceleration out of his transitions when he's playing top down, particularly on like quarters reps when he would be asked to, trigger on throws underneath. Has some fluid hips to change directions. Some instances of physicality as a tackler. He provides a little bit of thump. I think that's where you see that 210, 215 pound frame kind of come into play. 3 career pick sixes. Can play some off quarters. He can play some man, some too high, which is likely where you're going to get the best from him. In terms of the negatives, he has sufficient range as a free safety, but he's not overly rangy or
Yeah,
overly athletic. So if you're wanting
agreed.
this guy at the free safety position that's gonna, cover, a third of the world, like he's just not that guy. Like he takes good angles and he maximizes his athleticism, but he's not gonna make, I don't think, incredible plays where you're just kind of wowed by his range. And I don't think he's sticky enough in man coverage to make him a fit in the slot. So his projection is going to be kind of weird. I think as a quarters team that likes to play, too high, I think Jordan Battle could play that. Maybe some free safety stuff as well. If you're a team that likes to mix up your coverages more so and have both of your safeties kind of swap back there from time to time. But Battle's a guy that I think has baseline starter kind of capabilities maybe early in his career. I'm just not sure that I see the type of upside maybe that other people were seeing, particularly like last summer when he was getting mocked in the first round. I think he's a solid player. I just don't know if he's ever going to be like an impact player on an NFL defense.
I think he makes some interesting points overall with Jordan Battle and a lot of stuff I can't really disagree with. I'm gonna save my thoughts for Battle because he comes up a little bit later on my
Okay.
list. Number four for me is Antonio Johnson from Texas A&M. He is a very interesting player because he actually played a lot more slot corner in his career at Texas A&M as opposed to safety, but he shows the ability to be able to do both. The thing with him as a free safety, he's still kind of developing his eyes, so he can kind of get lost in on these underneath route concepts towards the middle of the field. Like he'll freeze his eyes and they might end up getting beat over the top. I saw that happen in the Arkansas game. There are definitely some things I really like about him. I think he's honestly a very explosive player despite the way he tested. He has really good closing speed. He's really aggressive downhill. There's some there's some really good stopping power that he shows as a tackler, just being able to bring back guys on contact. He can cause plays in the box. He's a guy who can move around. Don't quite know what his best role might be, but there's definitely a versatile player there for sure. The biggest issue, I mean, overall, is in terms of on his film, I think is the fact he's aggressive to a fault with his tackling. You see him tend to almost fall off ankles consistently, not be able to consistently wrap up because he's taking some of these hard aggressive angles. And a lot of times he's not, it's like if Brian Branch missed more tackles with the way the way he tackled. That's kind of how Antonio Johnson is. And Antonio Johnson doesn't quite have the functional play strength in that regard. He's much skinnier than you would expect for a guy like that. And if you look on his relative athletic score, he only had like a 4.78 score because a lot of the composite testing in terms of agility and explosion just didn't really match up. But the 4.52 40-yard dash, that matches up on film, 1.55 10-yard split. I wouldn't say that the testing itself revealed he was a bad athlete. I would say the testing revealed he is just an all right athlete for the position, and I think he's a guy you can definitely work with, and I think he's got enough position versatility that you can get creative with him.
Yeah, I actually have Antonio Johnson as my number 4 safety as well. 6'2", 200 pounds, 32 plus inch arms. So you like the little bit of length that he offers. Like you said, does a little bit of everything. He primarily played in the slot, particularly this past season, it seemed like. But he's played both safety positions as well. I think explosiveness and closing speed. Those were the two things that I really noted kind of in his scouting report. He has the frame and skill set to potentially match up with like big tight ends, bigger slot receivers from the inside. I think when they asked him to play man coverage, he was pretty sticky, staying in the hip pocket throughout his transitions. I think he's physical when playing in the box, but I do agree that like he's not the strongest guy, and I think that showed up like bench press. Like sometimes you'll see those numbers, and like you look at longer guys, and you're like, man, that just doesn't match up to what I see on tape. And I think didn't Antonio Johnson have like an 8 bench press or something like that?
It was 8 exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like I just when I saw that number, that was one like he's just not like he just needs to get a little stronger, especially if you're going to play
Yeah.
him as a box safety or as like even as a slot corner. I think that there's some potential upside there, particularly as it pertains to like him matching up with tight ends at the next level with his skill set. So I'm intrigued by that. Just some of the negatives I saw on tape. Completely on the same page. Lots of missed tackles on tape. Poor angles, diving at guys' legs, just being out of control, not coming to balance as a tackler. And then like another thing that I kind of noticed, like when I was like just going through his stuff in the summer, he didn't make a ton of plays on the ball. Like you would think that when they would be in like zone coverage and stuff, you would think with a guy with his type of frame that's playing the slot, kind of as that big nickel defender, like he would be able to affect throwing lanes a little bit more. Like I would see that he would try to like play through the hands and stuff like that, but he doesn't have a lot of ball production. I want to say that he only had like one interception or something like that, like one interception or one pass breakup this past season, but he wasn't targeted a lot either. So that made like I had to go to YouTube to try to find like some. I was looking for like plays at the catch point from a YouTube cut up because like on the
Yeah.
all 22 stuff that I had, there just wasn't enough times where I felt like he was getting the opportunity to play
Mhm.
at the catch point. So he's a solid player, but again, I think that there are some questions with him as far as does he have the necessarily like play strength to survive the type of role that a team might ask him to play, especially early on. So
Yeah, completely agreed on that. Just a quick stat I could throw at you.
mhm.
If you like Pro Football Focus's stuff, in 2021, when he was playing more as a slot corner, he was among the highest graded cornerbacks in man coverage as at an 84 grade, which is pretty solid overall, and it matched a little bit what I saw on film with him being able to man up on slot receivers, which I think is probably his best trait, honestly.
I would agree there. Who was your number 3 safety?
Jartavis Quan Martin. I like this guy's game quite a bit. Biggest thing with me, watching him, he plays a lot of slot corner and I think he shows the recovery speed and the ability to be sticky, but I think he has issues getting his eyes lost in the backfield because sometimes I noticed on crossing routes specifically, he would get his eyes back way too soon and he would lose track of the receiver. Receiver would almost like they would adjust their route and with their depth overall, and he would run the route and then he would realize that the receiver had just gone over the top of him instead, and he ends up giving up plays like that. There's also something you mentioned to me in private where sometimes he there are instances where quarterbacks just bail him out with bad ball placement, and you see it a lot with some of these Big Ten quarterbacks because, good lord, they're awful. They're really bad. And Jartavis Martin, I think he shows potential in that role, but where I think he excels is when he's playing single high, deep third as a free safety. I think he shows some unbelievable range on the back end. I think he's a fast processor, and I think he's really good at taking chances within the middle of the field and cutting off those crossing routes and being able to keep, you know, safety help over the top for on vertical routes. Like he's got good ball skills as well. I think he just has a good knack for identifying plays. He makes a lot of plays too within the box because he's a disruptive player, very aggressive. I like that about him. There's not really a ton to pick apart with his game because some of it is projection. Aside from like the stuff I saw with him as a slot corner, I thought he was a solid tackler. I think there's just a really good player there. He reminds me a lot of Devin McCourty, who used to play for the New England Patriots, who played some corner actually at Rutgers, and he ended up being
That'd be a great career for him.
yeah, man. He has that'd be like a really like that's like a comparable player that I saw on film. I think he can do a lot of the same roles that McCourty did back in New England, but I do think there's going to be a bit of a learning process in terms of consistently playing single high. He didn't all like I said, the thing with Jartavis Martin is he was moving all over the formation and he didn't get to play consistently at his best position, in my opinion. So I think there's going to be a little bit of questions there. But this is a player I would very much want to get my hands on if I'm a team. Just a very explosive player, really good testing athlete, like his game.
Yeah, my number three guy is actually another Illinois player. So we've had Illinois very well represented in
Mm,
these top five rankings, especially in the secondary. And it's going to be Sidney Brown. I debated back and forth on Sidney Brown or Antonio Johnson, and I'll kind of cover a little bit about Brown's game. 5'10", 210 pounds. He's a stocky built safety, but an explosive athlete. A 4.47 40-yard dash and a 1.51 10-yard split. The 1.51 10-yard split shows up on tape, like the closing speed, the burst that he plays with. This dude can cover some serious ground, especially like near the line of scrimmage and in the underneath areas of the field. Was primarily a box safety, but he did play a little bit of slot and only some occasional moonlighting as deep safety. But again, just that click and close ability and looking to dish out some substantial contact at the catch point. This dude will punch through the hands of receivers, tight ends. He has 10 career interceptions. The ball skills were notable. Some of those interceptions were gimmies, but I will also say that he made a couple that I feel like most safeties or box safeties wouldn't make. Just, recovery ability, making plays, leaping in the air. There's no fear in this dude's game at all. Like he plays 100 miles an hour at all times. Um, I thought that there were some impressive moments in coverage against tight ends, even though he was giving up
agreed.
some size, and he matches size with physicality. He does a good job closing space against bigger receivers to kind of disrupt the timing of route concepts versus the run. This dude shoots the hell out of some gaps. I mean, like if he sees a hole, he's hitting it. Like he is going full speed towards the ball carrier. Just in terms of the negatives, he is an absolutely atrocious tackler.
Terrible.
I mean, it's borderline. I don't want to say it's Drew Sanders level because Sanders is the worst, like one of the worst tacklers that I've seen in several draft classes. Sidney Brown's up there though, like just diving at guys' legs, out of control, not coming to balance, not wrapping up, occasionally going for the big hit when he shouldn't. I just I don't know what it is. I mean, I think that that's coachable if you get into play a little bit more in control, and also like he doesn't have a ton of length. Like obviously he's
Yeah.
5'10", he's not the longest guy. So like, what's his role going to be at the next level? Like we have this is my thing with him, and this is why like I'd be hesitant to take a guy like this even in the second round if I could. Like if I get him in the third, I can get on board because of the athleticism, and I think he's a fun player that I'd want to get my hands on if I'm a defensive coordinator. Guys like this have not transitioned to the league very well, and like a guy that I look at that was a little bit similar, and it kind of scares me, was Jabril Peppers. That was a little
Mhm.
bit like this as well, a box safety, primarily in college, really good athlete, explosive player, but lacks the link to really match up with tight ends. And then I don't think he's as good in man coverage to stick with like some of the shiftier, faster slot receivers. So what is he? If he's a box safety, how valuable is that in today's NFL? I really don't know the answer to that. You'd have the answer to that would probably vary depending on what defensive coordinator you asked. But like as like kind of a big nickel or quasi passing down linebacker or box safety, I think that he can fill all those roles. Um, I just don't know. Like I said, I think it's a value thing with him and getting him to play a little bit more in control. That's my hang up. So.
I wouldn't be surprised if an NFL team saw him as a slot corner because I think he actually matches up well in man coverage versus tight ends and some slot receivers. That's the thing I actually really like about him. He just competes really hard. But like you mentioned, the tackling is so hard for me to get on board with. It was so frustrating. Consistently just missing tackles, falling off guys. It almost like looked like he not only had short arms, but it looked like he wasn't as strong as like his body type actually indicates. Like a lot of times I was just noticing him just not being able like getting run over at times. Like there were several instances that happened. It was so hard for me to get on board with, but I watch him in coverage. That is the aspect of his game if I was to hang my hat on him as a player that could be good in the league, I think it's the coverage ability. I would put him as a slot corner more than anything. Um, he is he is outside my rankings overall, but I do understand why a team like why some people might have him up here. I just can't get past the tackling. He had 70 missed tackles in his career from 2018 to 2022, and that is just unacceptable. And at this point, if you haven't been able to fix that part of your game, I just think it's going to be a liability.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like if he is going to be a box safety, and we know that opinions on how that role is going to be at the NFL level, the value of it. Like if you're missing tackles as a box safety, like you're probably going to struggle to get on the field. So maybe maybe the coverage ability is enough to transition him to the slot. And he had a little bit of a chance to do that in Illinois. And like I said, there were some impressive flashes, but because of Quan Martin kind of being their main guy in the slot, he didn't get as much of a chance to do that this past season. So, who's your number two safety?
Jordan Battle from Alabama. And the reason I feel this way is I just think he is a jack of all trades and a master of none. For me, I think he actually matches up well against tight ends and man coverage. He might not be able to match up against like the shiftiest slot receivers, but I do think he shows better coverage chops than people give him credit for. I think in terms of his range as a deep third safety, it's fine. It's not exceptional, and I do think like he shows better ball skills than people give him credit for. I mean, a lot of it was him as a playing in the middle of the field as a robber, but he consistently was able to bait quarterbacks into those situations. I think the thing about Battle's game, it reminds me a little bit my comparison for him, and I don't think this is a one-to-one comp. I think it's more from how I could see him being in the NFL. Jordan Battle was the guy who did a lot of the dirty work at Alabama, which allowed Brian Branch to, roam around free in the box. And it kind of reminded me a lot of when Ryan Clark was at Pittsburgh with Troy Polamalu playing consistently everywhere, trying to harness that instinct. But Battle's such a consistent tackler. He has awesome stopping power on contact. He's got really good functional strength. Like he's a guy that is, he's 6'1", 209. I really like that size overall. I think he handles the box pretty well. I think he can handle deep third pretty well. And I think as a court, you mentioned too high as a court in quarters coverage. I think he's perfectly fine for that role as well. The thing about Battle, a lot of people are just going to be like, he's not, going to be a special player. But for me, I like having that reliability to go with a special player. And Jordan Battle for me gives me that type of reliability, and he's just been so consistent in his college career. Like he has graded out extremely well over his entire career. He's played so many snaps for Alabama, so many different roles for them. I just can't see him being he's one of the safer guys in this class. If on the day 2 end of the spectrum, there's a chance he could go day 3. There's a little bit of weird, a lot of people aren't really talking about him as much. And I do think when I went to go back to watch Alabama, I started noticing Jordan Battle a lot more and noticing a lot of the things he did that allowed Brian Branch to just roam free and do, the things he excelled at. So for me, I like a guy like Jordan Battle like that. I think he can be I think he could have a similar type of role in the league, kind of like a Ryan Clark.
Yeah, that's a good comp, man. I actually like really like that comp because I think that, like you said, I don't think that Battle offers the type of upside that a lot of people are gonna get, super excited about. But I do think that he has like I said, I think he has baseline starter capability at the next level. And Clark had some really good years in Pittsburgh. He would be, that's a really good comp that I can definitely get on board with. My number two safety, and I'm actually gonna parlay this into like from our YouTube video discussion, is Quan Martin from Illinois. I like this dude a lot, man. Like I think I liked watching this Illinois defense so much. So like I'm a little bit biased because I've spent so much time watching this defense over the course of this cycle. But every time I watch Illinois, man, like I would be watching Devin Witherspoon, I'd be watching Sidney Brown, and it just felt like 21 was just all over the field, just flashing and flashing and flashing. 5'11", 195 pounds, burst, closing speed. Those are the two things that like really show up on tape. I think he can play free safety if you need him to, and I think he can play full time in the slot if you need him to. And I think that positional versatility is really why I'm able to get on board with him as my number two safety. Love his technique and catch coverage. He's got enough recovery speed to, get himself back into phase whenever guys are able to get a step on him. I like the way he turns and locates the football down the field. He's shown to be opportunistic when the ball's in the air, kind of like Sidney Brown. There were a couple, plays where, maybe he was given some gimmies, but I also think that he does a good job routinely finding the football when it's in the air. This dude has a violent play demeanor. I think that they must have like programmed or brainwashed all these Illinois DBs to just be like heat-seeking missiles that just attack everything that moves. Because him, Brown, and Witherspoon, they ain't backing down from nobody, man. And I think that's why I just like loved watching them so much. It was so much fun watching them just be just borderline reckless, abandon all the time. But he wrecked everything in his way, man. He's also a reliable tackler, so that was the big
Only
thing.
missed 4 tackles this past year.
Yeah, that was the big difference between him and Brown to me. Like I think that both of them play an aggressive style of football. Both of them are physical. But Martin, could offer some of those big hits while not as many whiffs, and that was really important to me when I was watching this film. I thought his play recognitions against like screens, he would blow screens up anytime they would see like trick plays and stuff or reverses. Like he was constantly in good position, so I liked that about his game. In terms of things that I thought that were kind of negatives on film, he will get himself out of plays and double moves. He, like you said, kind of getting too locked into reading the quarterback's eyes at times, is a little bit of an issue. He got beat on a double move. I think it was against Purdue for a long touchdown where they hit him with that out and up, where he was peeking in the backfield a little bit, and allowed a big play. I think it was a touchdown as well. some of the better, shiftier slot receivers, I think, could give him some trouble in man coverage, but like he has plenty of man coverage experience to where I at least kind of trust him in that regard. I like this dude a lot. I think that he can wear a lot of different hats for your defense. Um, there's not a safety that I really love in the second round range because I have Brian Branch, spoiler, as my number one safety and as a
Shocker.
first round grade, someone that I've talked about a lot throughout the process. But um, if I was going to go for like a mid day two safety, Quan Martin would be who I would bet on just because I don't really know. It depends on the defense that you're playing, probably, and what you needed personnel wise. But I think between free safety and slot, one of those is going to work. Like I feel pretty confident that he's gonna work out at one of those positions. He tested extremely well. You mentioned to me his ability in free safety. I was literally just watching a clip of the Nebraska game where
Yeah.
he's in free safety and they're like running this little wheel. I think it's a peel concept. So you get a post and a wheel to the open side of the field. And he comes from the free safety. He's playing center field. He like almost picks the ball off on the sidelines, ends up dropping it, but like makes a crazy play, real rangy play from center field. So I like Quan Martin. He's definitely a guy that I feel like I am a little bit higher on than the consensus. I'm consistently seeing him in the like 100 range, I think, from the consensus board.
That's
Like
pretty crazy, honestly. Like,
80, yeah, I'm seeing like 80s to 100 range, and I'm like, in a class like this with these safety options, I am a little bit surprised that he's not getting a little bit more buzz. So I'm interested to see how his career pans out because I think that this could be a nice little flag plant for me for sure. So
I like Jartavis Quan Martin a lot, and he and Jordan Battle were separated by a few spots on my big board. It was a very hard debate between the two because I think I see a lot more star potential in a guy like Jartavis Quan Martin, while I just see a very solid player, just safe
yep.
player in a guy like Jordan Battle. And sometimes it's very tough to measure, and rank those type of guys because it really just depends on the team you have and your need a lot of the time. And we're scouting these players, we don't have those rigid requirements, so it's a lot more fluid in how we look at it.
Yeah. Totally agree. I'll let you go first here with the number one safety. I don't think there's any real debate, at least in my opinion, about this one.
Yeah, it's Brian Branch. I'm not gonna lie, it's impossible to find a better safety in this class that can do all the things he can. He is just such a good slot corner. He is so disruptive as a blitzer. Like, I think you said it best. You get the Mike Hilton-esque blitzing ability with better coverage upside in the slot. And I'm just like, I'm so on board with a player like that because, and we talk constantly about instincts and the ability, play recognition, film study. Branch is so unbelievably good in that regard. What
Smart.
what Branch can do, like in terms of baiting quarterbacks, even from just an overhang position, like consistently, I've seen him just absolutely peel. Like he will be like between two route concepts, and he is just sitting on it, and he just baits the quarterback into a false sense of security. The game against Kansas State, I know you've shown that play like so many times. It's unreal, just the type of ball skills and just ability to bait the quarterback. And he's an unbelievable tackler too, despite how aggressive he is. That's the thing that's so fun to watch. He takes such solid angles despite that aggressive nature, and I just love that about him. And the closing speed, something people don't talk about. He's like in the 155s as a 10 yard split. That is a very good 10 split. 457 as a 40. Those are comparable numbers to a guy like a Justin Simmons or a Kyle Hamilton. Those things don't always, like, the thing with safety play is I care so much about closing speed. I care so much about the 10 split. Can you accelerate fast? And Branch does, because top end speed doesn't matter as much as it does being able to play fast consistently. and Branch does. Branch has so many good things that he does. He's such a smart player. While he didn't play free safety a lot, Nick Saban has consistently said this guy could play free safety if he wanted to. Like he doesn't talk up his players for the sake of talking up his players. He believes Brian Branch is that type of dude. And I'm going to say this, there is concern over his recovery speed. I do think there are instances when I have watched him uh, play from the slot, and there's a lot of times where he's playing from a trail technique. And he's consistently being able to, play from that because he's got a little bit of help over the top. And a lot of times, he doesn't. If he doesn't get that help, I saw it happen against Xavier Worthy. By the way, that dude's going to run a 4.2.
Yeah,
And
he's
how
fast,
many? Yeah, and
fast.
how many guys end up running those types of numbers and playing in the slot? Very few. And that's my point about Brian Branch. He's not going to have to worry about that type of speed from within the slot. And he also has some really good plays from past years where he was matched up against Garrett Wilson, like against Ohio State, and he looked really good in that. And obviously Garrett Wilson got better, but you like seeing that type of play versus the best. And I do think he might need a little bit of scheme help in specific matchups, but overall, I think you could trust this guy in man coverage in the slot. I think I like Brian Branch a lot. He's just outside the top 10 prospects for me, just because I have a little bit of concern about the recovery speed, but hard to pick too many faults from his game.
Yeah, dude, he's a baller, man. I think that Branch was he was definitely one of my favorite prospects to watch throughout this cycle. Remember like when Honey Badger was coming out, and like I guess it was when he was coming out, or like when he was a young player in the league, like there was that
Mhm.
like saying like Honey Badger doesn't care. Like he just played like, Tyron when he was coming out just played like every snap is like the last snap of this dude's life. And Branch plays the exact same way. And I
Very
just
similar testing too.
I love that about his game, man. Like when I watch this dude play, like I don't see how you can put on the tape and say like you wouldn't bang the freaking table to get this guy on your defense. I just don't get it. You want him to blitz and run over a 220-pound linebacker or running back. He'll do it. If you want this dude to blow up screens, take on blocks on the perimeter, he does it. You want him to go cover an elite slot receiver like a Garrett Wilson, he'll do it. Like if you want him to play safety, I fully believe that he can do that, even though he wasn't really asked to do more than like play in the slot over the course of this past season. Like you mentioned, he's such a reliable tackler, dude. Like if this dude gets his hands on you, you're going to the turf. Like I think the only
So
guy
much
that
stopping power
I can
too.
remember like making him miss, I think was Anthony Richardson. Like, and I
Yes.
think that he made him miss in the hole for a touchdown this past season. But like, other than that, and I watched, 5, 6, 7 games. Obviously, the numbers support it. He's just so incredibly patient and balanced, despite being so aggressive and physical. That I love the ability. You mentioned him in trail technique, dude. I It is very rare that you see like this level of teach tape trail technique from slot corners. But dude, he does it exceptionally well. Like he had a clutch, I forget what game it was. He had a clutch pass breakup in the end zone as
Jonathan
time
Mingo.
expired. Yes, Ole Miss. He goes up the seam, carries Mingo perfectly, ends up getting his hand on the ball, pass breakup to end the game. Uh, he had another rep that I've highlighted on Twitter a couple times of him being in trail, and he's basically guarding a sail route from inside leverage, and he is literally running the route for the receiver and ends up with a pass breakup. You throw in the Kansas State game, which you mentioned. That's like my favorite tape of his. I think he ended up with like double-digit tackles. He had a 3-play sequence where he had like 2 run stops, an interception, and then there was another play that like he made another like nice play in coverage as well, like right after that. It's just the tape, the film is the film. Like I don't care what the testing says. Like I know he didn't test as well as like I would have hoped or I thought that he was going to test. But I just think like when you look at this dude on film, especially in a class like this that doesn't have the top end talent, I can still get on board with Brian Branch in the first round, man. And I think that, like you said, I'm not saying he's gonna become Tyrann Mathieu or like that type of player. But like I think that this type of player can exist in the NFL and still be a really, really good pro. And even then, like even if he's not Honey Badger, because I don't think he's that type of playmaker, that elite playmaking ability that Matthew had coming out of LSU. There's no character concerns. Brian Branch is A plus 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 character guy, according to Nick Saban. Very smart kid, offers a really high floor. So, like, even if he is, let's just say he's an average athlete at the next level, he's not better than his testing. I still think what he does against the run, how he, plays physical downhill, already like his coverage skill set, this is a starting caliber player that you're going to get your hands on. I'd be very surprised if Brian Branch busted. I really would. I just don't think it's possible. I really don't.
He
But
had 4 missed tackles in his career, and he
career.
yes, in his career, and he
Sidney
played.
Brown had games with 4 missed tackles. Games. I mean, we're not even talking about. We're talking about an exceptional, elite tackler. Like it's. I don't know, man. I know that he's not going as high in mock drafts. He was like going top 10 early on, and like now it seems like his range is like more in like the 20s. But
Jacksonville.
I'm going to fall over if this dude falls like too much further. Like I don't see how the NFL could overthink this. I just think that the tape is way too good to let this happen. So hopefully he still goes round one. But yeah,
Or you can
fun.
go to 32 to us. I'd
Yeah,
appreciate that
yeah,
one.
32 the Steelers, man. I wouldn't be upset about that one. I was literally, I know we talked about that in the YouTube episode, but comparing Branch and Quan Martin, but either guy, like I'm all on board.
Yeah,
Like getting a boundary corner in this class and then doubling down to get a slot corner a little bit later would be, I mean, I'm all on board with that. So appreciate you guys for hopping on with us. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/all Steelers talk. Nick and I both want to give everybody a shout out for everybody like watching the positional rankings, the draft podcast. It's been a pleasure, talking ball with Nick, but also like getting to share our thoughts with you guys, hearing your all's feedback. So, make sure y'all drop a like, drop a comment, let us know, what you thought of the safeties, what you think of the draft class, and Nick and I are going to be hosting a live pre-draft special Thursday from 5 to 7 Eastern. So make sure y'all hit the notification bell. Make sure you set your reminders, all that stuff. Come join us. Let's talk some ball before the best weekend of the year, if you ask Nick and myself,
yes.
pops off. So we're really excited about that. But we will check you guys next time. Y'all have a good one. Peace.
Peace.